my name is, Matt Cox. Um, Basically, I'm a con man. I grew up in Tampa. I owned a mortgage company. I'm essentially, I don't know. I'm, I am responsible for, I don't know if I'm responsible for this, but the government has attributed me to having built financial institutions out of anywhere between, I would say $15 million to $55 million, but that's an exaggeration on their part. I've never seen $55 million. So, so basically, I own a mortgage company in Tampa in the early 2000s, and my mortgage company committed mortgage fraud, a considerable amount of mortgage fraud, and at some point I ended up on probation, lost the mortgage company. Then I went on to instead of doing the right thing and just claiming bankruptcy and starting over in another industry, I just continued to commit fraud, and I sold like 11.5 million at that point. Then I went on the run. The FBI shows up to come and arrest me at some point. I went on the run. I was on the run for 3 years. I was on the Secret Service's most wanted list. I was on the FBI's most wanted list. I was number one on the Secret Service's most wanted list. Let's see, the U.S. Marshals were looking for me. Secret Service, FBI. I continued to commit fraud. I defrauded the banks out of an additional $3.5 million while on the run. And eventually I got caught and I received 26 years in federal prison. I ended up doing 12 and a half years. And I was released about a year ago. I've had like 26 or 27 IDs, driver's licenses in 7 different states. I've counterfeited another probably 20 or so, stolen over 50 identities, according to government. Had a couple dozen. Yeah, I've had a couple dozen passports issued by the State Department in other people's names. I have, I've been caught multiple times by banks, talked my way out of it, caught by law enforcement, handcuffed, taken to police stations, talked my way out of it. And anyway, went to prison. I cooperated, got my sentence taken down from 26 years to 12 years. I write true crime stories now at this time. I'm a true crime writer. I also paint, and I do podcasts periodically. I have a book, a memoir, and several true crime books that are out. Yeah, right. Nice.
Look at me.
Unless I were to get into specifics.
Yeah, and all that's fascinating stuff. And we all have that part where we just love the story, the how I came to connect with you is I broke my wrist, and I had to sit on the couch for hours, and I think I watched 12 hours of your podcasts. I mean, because that story is it's just riveting. But that's not why I sought you out. I sought you out because when you were talking about, and I'm not going to use her name because when I interviewed her, she said she changed her name. So I'm not going to use this person's name. So this person turned, when you were in this life, this person turned herself in and went to prison because she turned herself in because she was involved in one of these crimes with you. And very casually you said, oh yeah, I talked to her. Once I got out, I talked to her every day. So you're a con man. I didn't know whether that was real. I reached out to you and you said, oh yeah, not only do I talk to this person, but I talk to these people, and I talked to this guy that was on my indictment, and I talked to this guy that's the part I want to drill into, because I think your crime story is fascinating. And I read the book, but I think you might hold the secret sauce to people like me. I think you might have part of this, and I don't know if it's a side effect. You called yourself a narcissist before. I don't know if it's a side effect of that, because most of us wouldn't have the guts to even reach out to these people. So I guess my first question is, I know you have regret. Do you have remorse? Do you have the way that normal people do, because I'm seeing you have like this crime superpower when it comes to this stuff.
The crime superpower? I don't know what that.
I think you might. All right, here's a perfect example. So I'll give you three criminals, and I used this example when we talked last time. Frank Abagnale, Catch Me If You Can, right?
Right.
Jordan Belforth and Matt Cox. So Frank
Right.
Abagnale, con man, did all this stuff. 40 years later, he's still remorseful. 40 years later, when he talks about it, he's still regretful. He's embarrassed by all he did. Jordan Belforth, the guy from Wolf of Wall Street. This is one cocky guy. I've seen him walk off interviews. I've seen him be sort of cornered, and he'll walk off. He's very arrogant. It doesn't seem like he has any remorse. And then you're right in the middle. How do you compare yourself to these two guys, and why are you able to do what they can't?
I think the question, one, remorseful. I mean, obviously, if I could go back and make different decisions, I would.
But you don't
I don't
carry
know.
it. It's not a burden for you,
It
right?
doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't. I don't constantly feel horrible about anything that I did.
But most people who leave prison do. Do you think?
No. I
No?
think most people that go to prison are sociopaths. They're, they suffer from, they're antisocial. And I don't think they have any remorse. I think if you're a con man and you go to prison, then and I've met dozens of these guys, and I would say every single one of them, by the way, I can't sit here and say, well, no, there was that one guy. Nope, every one of them, while incarcerated, all they were thinking about was, how do I hide from this? Can I change my name? There's a company called reputation.com. I can hire them to get rid of all the stuff on the internet. How can I re-enter the business? How can they're not thinking, none of them are thinking about taking responsibility.
You didn't meet one person in prison that was full of remorse and full of regret, and
Con
it was a
men?
burden. Yes.
No. I'm talking about specifically con men. Now,
Okay. All right.
listen, there's lots of guys that are in there like they can't. They're remorseful because they lost it. Their kids don't talk to them anymore.
Right.
Their wife divorced them. There's all kinds of things that went wrong, and so they feel horrible what they did. Oh, if I'd only known, and this and that. And there are those guys. There's not a ton of them, but there are those guys. But I would say specifically out of con men, most of them are either denying their con men at all. Oh, it's not what it sounds like. They twisted it. Well, then why'd you take a plea for 10 years? Why didn't you go to prison? I mean, why didn't you go to trial? Or
Right.
they went to trial and then, you end up reading their transcripts, or you read an article on them or something, and you realize it was, it was a misunderstanding. You were using a different name. Money went into your bank account. You were spending the money on your car and buying houses and this. You never invested in what you borrowed got the money from your investors for. It's a fraud. Just, oh, you don't understand. No, I understand fraud. You're committing fraud. They just don't want to own up to it. They're so used to a life of just denial. And
And is that something that builds up, or is it just something you have to have this in your DNA in order to be a good con man, or is it
Sure,
just something?
possibly, or maybe you're just a good salesperson that something in your childhood went wrong. But I'm saying these guys, I'm going to say typically, but to me, I've never met a guy that was like, wanted to get out and really do the right thing or own up to it. It was always about, and if they did, they wanted to spin it somehow. Instead of just saying, I went to prison, I screwed up. Here's what I did. I did this and this and this, and this is what happened, and that's the way it is. And and I'm gonna move on, and I'm not gonna hide from it. I'm not gonna not tell anybody. To me, if the opportunity presents itself where you can own up to it and tell someone, and you don't, you're hiding it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're at a having a conversation with somebody and they say, oh, so what do you do for a living? And, oh, so how long have you been doing that? Oh, how long have you lived here in Tampa? Oh, and you keep giving these evasive, like, oh, I was born here. You can answer those questions, or, oh yeah, I used to be in real estate. Now I write true crime. I've always liked it. You can answer questions without lying, but you're still being deceitful.
Right.
To me, the moment somebody says anything, I immediately say, oh, I just got out of federal prison. I was in federal prison for this and this, and this. I immediately start tell them everything right then, because otherwise you're avoiding it and you're being deceitful, and you know damn well what they're asking. Don't try and be cute. And most of these guys that are in prison, that are con men, are trying to get out of prison and cover up what they did so that they can really just get into a position to commit another fraud or another crime.
All right, so let me spin this on you a little bit. So we're using this example of going to prison, but there are people out there every day that have done something that they're just grief stricken about. How do we take that? I mean, are you saying from your perspective that if I did this horrible thing and I don't admit it when I have a chance, I'm running from it?
Yeah.
Really?
Why? What? I mean, if you've done something and the opportunity presents itself where you could actually own up to it right then, how sorry really? I'm not saying, basically you understand what they're going for, and you start avoiding that, answering that question, then I mean, how sorry are you
Yeah.
for it? Does that make
Important
sense?
point. I think that's a really
Something.
important point. Yeah. If you have something that you are really sorry about, and this is the gospel according to Matt Cox, and you have the chance to own up to it, and you don't, then you are not sorry.
Yeah, I think you're just
Yeah.
avoiding it. I mean, look, listen. Why? Look, here's the way I see it is, like, for instance, it's like this. It's there's a lot of guys in prison that cooperate with the government. Okay, they're snitches, they're rats,
Right.
they're cooperating, whatever, they're CIs, whatever, however you want to say it. You can say it nice and whatever, but the fact is that they'll do it and then they'll deny it the rest of their life.
Mm.
And And, I go on podcasts and I say, this is what I did. I cooperated. I did this. I did this. I did this. And if you have a problem with it, you know, tough, tough. I mean, I don't know if I can cuss. I don't think you want me to cuss, but I'm saying,
Whatever you want.
yeah, then go fuck yourself.
Right.
If you have a problem with it, that's your fucking problem. But for me to sit here and deny it and try and spin it and lie about it, I feel like you give up that right when you cooperate.
Mm.
So if I'm going to sit here and say that I was in a business relationship with someone, and when it came down to it, I screwed this person over. I kept $50,000 and I knew there was nothing they could do, and I just stopped answering their phone calls. And then 10 years later, I see the guy and I said, man, I'm so sorry about that. And I feel so bad. And I this and I that. And I, wish I hadn't done that. And I this and I can't really make it up to you, or for whatever reason, you don't have the money, or maybe you do have the money. You're just not going to pay him. Instead, you know what most people do? Most people do the whole, well, you don't understand
Right.
what happened. This
Right.
guy one time did this and this, or even if they said they were sorry. So you say you're sorry, but the next opportunity you have, and where you're friends with somebody else, you avoid that discussion. Where you're friends with a mutual friend, you avoid the discussion about what happened 10 years ago or 5 years, whatever it was. You spin it, you
Mm.
avoid it, you try not to own up to it, then you're not sorry. You're not really sorry. It was convenient, it's a scam, you're lying. To me, I would say, yeah, that thing with Jimmy? Yeah, I saw him the other day, I said this and this, and oh, okay, really? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I really fucked up. I
Mm.
really did. And I'm not in a financial place where I can really make it right for him. I talked to him about it. I explained the situation. It was absolutely my fault. But once again, you had a friend, there's a mutual friend that knew the situation and you just avoided it. So you're not really sorry. First of all, if that guy probably already made his mind up, right? Whether you did it or not, or whether
Right.
you were responsible. You've been lying this whole time and you decide to come clean, then come clean. I'm not saying you have to pay the guy back. It's been 15 years. You can do what you want to do. But if you're going to own up to it, or if you've been lying about a situation, telling everybody this is what really happened, but you know what? You know that's not what really happened. And
Mm.
one day you decide, you know what? I'm not gonna be a scumbag anymore. I'm just gonna start being honest about everything from here on out. Because that helps you be a more honest person, doesn't it?
What happens? What happens when you do that? I mean, was there a time when you were that guy angry and screaming and saying, "Oh, it's not all my fault," or
Wasn't me. It's
yeah,
not what you think. It's
did you
not
go
this.
through that time period?
Yeah, I think there's been a time when I would try and justify every single thing I did.
So you could see a difference between when you finally said, "Yeah, I did it," and you saw a
Well,
difference in the burden that you carried.
I think I'm 1,000 times happier,
Yeah.
you know, and I just, I don't, I go into a situation and I've gone into situations and where people have been like, hey, you might not want to, if this comes up, don't mention it, that you getting out of prison, you this, I'm like, oh, well, then I shouldn't go. No, no,
Mm,
just don't say anything well, then I shouldn't go. Why? Because if it comes up, I'm going to mention it. Because if someone
really?
asks, I'm going to mention it. Because now you're asking me to go in there and be deceitful. If I'm going to be deceitful, I'm not going to do it for my pride or for your pride because you have a friend that's a felon. If you have a friend that's a felon that you don't want anybody to know is a felon, then don't have a friend as a felon, or don't hang around with people that give a shit that
Mm.
you have friends that are, oh, well, you've got that friend. I don't know about hanging out with you. Well, then I shouldn't be hanging out with you or I shouldn't be hanging out with them. I mean, I got to make a choice, you know? I don't understand that. And I just don't have the time or patience anymore
Did you
to
see a
just,
lot of that when you first got out?
I did there were a few people that that I thought would respond to emails and, like, I don't want anything from you, but I'm trying to rebuild a, shoot, what does my probation officer call it? Not a secure, like a safety net,
Hmm.
a group of friends that are good for you. And I'm trying to kind of rebuild that. And so I'm reaching out to people that I'm thinking are decent people that know me and that would want to, we could go to dinner, we could hang out, we have similar interests, and they don't want to talk to me.
Mm.
Not all of them, but about half of them just don't respond. Or they, hey, what's up? Yeah, we got to go to, I get the text. We got to go to dinner. We got to go to dinner. Yeah, definitely, definitely. I talk to my, my friend, and we're gonna this and we're that, and it just never happens. And but the truth is that you don't really want to go to dinner with me. You
Okay,
don't want to.
so let me drill into this because this is interesting. So your average person that would do that, there is an enormous risk to reach out to that person. They're taking all the chips and the emotional chips and they're putting them to the middle of the table. They're going, I'm reaching out to this person. I hope that they're positive. When they're not, it's a huge hit. But to you, you seem to go, okay, they're not going to accept me. They're not going to be interested in me. They're kind of blowing me off. They're just being nice. And it doesn't seem to affect you the way that it would affect other people.
Well,
That
I'm not.
risk of reaching out.
I mean, I think you and I have discussed this before, but I mean, I'm not. I am, and I don't know. Well, I mean, maybe it's learned behavior. I'm just not concerned about what you think of me. I mean, your opinion of me or someone's opinion of me, if this person's saying, oh, I don't, too good to be around this guy, or this isn't my kind of guy, or this or that, I'm not offended by it because, you know what I'm saying? I'm not concerned about your opinion. Your opinion doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, you're just someone that I need to hang out with that's probably going to help me in some way. And I'm concerned about helping me at this point. I'm not, and if you don't want, I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. I don't dislike you. If someone's a CPA and they've got all lawyers and CPA and doctor friends and they're in the upper 3% of society and they're driving $100,000 Mercedes and living in $1 million house and they say, hey, I don't want to hang out with you. I understand that you've built your life. You don't want to hang out with a guy like me. You have a certain impression of me, right or wrong, and it doesn't bother me. I would prefer you just to say it.
Hmm.
Listen, Matt, to be honest, you're just not the kind of guy that I really want to hang out with or be in my crowd. I wouldn't even be offended. I'd be like, thank God I didn't spend the next 2 weeks having to text you back and forth to arrange a dinner that you don't want, that you don't even want to go to. Perfect. I can move on to somebody who's interested in hanging out with me.
So what would your advice be to people that don't have that skill, that want to develop that? Because there's nothing unhealthy about what you just said. I think that's very healthy.
I,
And so, but if a part, some of that might be learned, some of that might be in your DNA. What would your advice be to people to develop that skill? Because I think that's a great skill to have.
you think, like hearing that, you think that this is a rule or a way of living that gives you the right to be an asshole. And it's absolutely not. And she explains it's absolutely not. It's just prioritizing. And
Hmm.
she's she cusses a little bit in it and everything, but when you listen to the whole thing, you'll go, you're just like, wow, it's great. It's great. You want me to? I'll send it to
Yeah,
you,
send it to me.
and you can put the
Yeah,
link
yeah,
on.
yeah.
It's great. It's great. She really just explains that you don't have to be polite to everyone. Or lie to them or go to their birthday party. She uses the example of having somebody at work who's a secretary that she never talks to that's having a party, that she doesn't even talk to, but she's like, but everybody's going to go that I know, and it's work, and I feel like obligated and this, but I really want to watch this TV series. And then she has this whole thing, and she's like, then you just tell them no. You say,
Mm.
no, I'm sorry. I can't. And she goes through the whole thing. She's like, and you don't need to feel guilty about that. There's
Right,
no reason to feel guilty about
right.
saying I'm prioritizing my time, and we're not close enough friends for me to take 3 hours out of my night when I could be spending that doing something I want to do, or do that spending time with people that are in my life and would be in my life. You're in my life because it's work. You're a work friend. If I ever get fired or quit, you're gone. I love those people that think they're such great friends with their hairdresser because they see him twice
Right,
a month, and
right.
we're super good friends.
Or your
No, you're
tax
not.
guy that you see once a year.
Right.
Right,
Yeah, you're not. Just
right.
because he knows the names of your kids. It's just silliness. And I just don't have time for silliness. And I don't and I'm not concerned about what anybody thinks about me. And and we had talked about, like it was like the people that had cooperated against me. Remember we had talked about that one
Hmm.
time, and you were saying, like, how is it you talk to these people, or you're okay with these people that cooperated against you, and you're not upset? I mean, most people would be upset. I've even had people that have said things that were just not true, you know, and I look at it and I think that, initially I was upset. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, not saying something is not true, but just cooperating in general is what a decent person does.
Hmm.
Obviously, it's what a lot of criminals do when they're caught. But in general, I'm pleading guilty. I was committing a crime. Someone is cooperating, telling the authorities that I committed the crime. If I'm truly sorry about it, and
Hmm.
I wish I hadn't done it, other than just getting caught, then why would I be upset that that person's cooperating? They're doing the right thing. They're a decent person. They're a good citizen. They're trying to be a good citizen, even if they were a criminal, even if they're doing it to save their own neck. What does it matter? They're
Yeah,
not.
and I get that, and that makes perfect sense on paper, but we're also people. And how do you not take that he turned me in? He defined, how do you not go down that path? And I understand what you're saying and makes perfect sense. But when emotions are involved, things that make sense on paper don't.
Well, I think having been through it and realizing kind of like people's true nature after going through it, I think just realized that it was unrealistic of me to
Mm,
have ever thought that these people were going to not cooperate or go to jail or do additional time by not cooperating against me. They have families, they have children and wives and mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters that want them out there. And I'm just some guy you met a year or two ago that made you some money.
Mm.
And yeah, did we go out and have fun and laugh a lot? Sure we did. But that really is completely irrelevant. The people you truly, owe loyalty to is the people that you're leaving behind. I always love the guys that justify stealing or committing crimes or doing something for the sake of their family. Well, I'm doing it to give my family more money and take care of them and really? Because I mean, the truth is your son, although he does want a new toy or whatever every once in a while, I think he'd rather have you there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just your wife, yeah, she'd like a nicer vehicle or a bigger house, but you know what? In the end, she really just wants you around. And it's I think it's just justification.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Look, I perfectly happy with everybody that was involved in my case that cooperated against me. I love to hang out with them, go to dinner and laugh and joke around. And I've talked to many of them, and they're always, I even have a guy that I know cooperated against me that he doesn't know that I know because nothing happened during the cooperation. So it never came to fruition. But I know that he was actively working with the authorities, and I've never said anything to him.
Mm.
Said anything to him because I don't want to embarrass him, and he has a certain like a reputation, and he but I know, and I don't it's like I don't want to say anything. He's a nice guy. I'm not upset. I'm not upset about it, and I
Right.
honestly don't think I want to mention it because I don't want to hear him deny it. When I have the Freedom of Information Act documents from the authorities.
And why would
that
you? What would you gain by doing that? That doesn't.
by
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
something?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't. But I think a lot of people would. A lot of people that have have
Oh.
that, they just have the wrong attitude. They would want to confront him or say something or make him
Right.
look bad.
Right.
It's just silliness. It's pride. It's just your pride. And it's horrible because I'm so arrogant and I'm definitely a narcissist. And I just think everything I do is just wonderful.
Hmm.
And it's horrible. It's just a constant battle for me, constantly having to stop myself and stop myself from patting myself on the back.
Where's the line for that? I mean, where's the line between confidence and enthusiasm and gumption and narcissism? Where's the dividing line?
It's if I can feel myself bragging, and to be honest with you, if I feel myself kind of bragging about something, I've probably already gone off the charts. Like by the time I realize it, I've already been doing it, and it's obnoxious.
Okay.
And I have to kind of stop myself and go, look, get over yourself, bro. Okay. I keep reminding myself, you're just some douchebag that got out of prison. Okay. That's all you are.
Mm.
You just got out of prison. And, I have these guys that like admire me because I was on American Greed and Dateline. And there were all these articles, and they admire me, and they admire me for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
And, I have guys that send me comments that, I have a YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
And I do movie reviews and I do podcasts and things. And the guys in the comments will want to contact me to talk to me about a business or what would you like. They're asking me for advice, and I'm like, I'm just the worst person to ask, even though I wouldn't try and give you bad advice. Clearly you're making a bad decision. You don't reach out to me for advice.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying it'd be bad advice, but there's got to be other people.
But how does that not fuel your narcissism? I mean,
it does.
What you did in prison, by the way, from a business standpoint, collecting these stories, that's just genius. No one could be. I mean, you had 12 years in prison. You had all the time with these guys. So you sat down and you collected these stories. No reporter in the world is going to get a fraction of that stuff. And now you walked out with this portfolio of stories. Brilliant. But now, as you're reaching out and you're exposing yourself, you're finding these people, and they're going to find you, and they're going to be fanboys. And how does that not make the narcissism go through the roof?
I mean, it does. I'm constantly fighting it. It's just like a constant struggle, and it seems so silly, but it really is. And luckily, the girl I'm dating is she's like keeps me on an even keel. I'll I'm like, oh, this and this and this and this, and she'll look at me and she'll go, listen, calm down, okay, you're not all that. And I'm like, all right, all right, all right. And then there are other times I'll wake up and I'm depressed or something, and I'm like, man, this is never going to work, and it's taken so long, and that deal fell apart, and this happened, and it's just, I don't know what I'm doing. And she's like, what are you talking about? You're incredible. You're great. You're doing great. You just got out of prison. How fast do you think, so she pulls me back up.
Right.
She's like trying to keep me here instead of going up and down. They're trying, everybody I knows. But you know what I think does that is the fact that everybody knows that I have these issues because I'm so open about it. And one of the things and I've told everybody the story that knows me. I had a friend of mine named Caesar that was in prison with me, and we were in a drug program called RDAP. And Caesar, and because we talked about narcissism and everything, you go through this program. It's just an incredible program. And so I would see him, and I'd say, hey, what's going on? How are you doing? And he'd go, oh man, I just got off the phone with my wife. And he would start telling me about this argument he had with his wife. And then this is what I typically do all the time. The whole time you're talking, I'm just waiting for an opportunity to talk about myself. Like I'm waiting for an in. So he would say something, I'd go, oh man, I remember one time with my wife,
Right.
I did, and he would go, wait a second. I'm not done yet. I'm going to be done in a minute. Give me a couple more minutes. And he'd keep going.
Right.
And then I go, oh, you know what? That reminds me. He go, oh, wait a second. He go, listen, I got about 5 more minutes of talking, and then we're going to get our food, and we're going to sit down, and we're going to talk about you for the rest of lunch.
Right.
But you're going to give me 5 more minutes. And there have been times when he would be telling me a story, and I'm the whole time and he would stop, and he'd even stop in the middle of the story and say, bro, I want to let you know something. I know it's killing you right now, but you're doing great. He didn't even have to say what it was.
He's encouraging you for not being a jerk. He's like, just not be a jerk, just 5 more minutes longer.
Right. And here's the thing. He wasn't doing it to be mean or to be rude or for him to be a jerk or to try and make me feel bad. He was doing it because he's a friend of mine, and he knew it was a behavior that was wrong and that I wanted to correct in myself. And I was absolutely unable to do it without help. I mean, it really was. It's horrible. To this day, it's horrible. My girlfriend, I have a friend, Stacy. I have all kinds of friends, and they will do that. They will say, okay, we were talking about, I'll start saying some shit, and then they'll go,
right.
we were talking about me.
Right.
Let me finish what I'm saying. You just, what did they always say? You just hijacked the conversation. Yeah. You're hijacking the conversation.
Yep.
Let's go back. I was telling you about my friend Jennifer. Let me finish telling you about Jennifer. Then you could tell me what. And I'm like, and I don't even, I'm like, fuck, I can't believe I just did it again. Who wants to be friends with that guy? I wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's a one-sided relationship. It's a horrible relationship. It's all about me all the time. Myself by people that let me get away with just bad behavior.
And it's got to be hard for the narcissism because you're making a living now talking about you. You're making a living doing all this stuff. Let me tell you about me, and that's part of the process right now to get your name out there.
Well, yes, but I'm also talking about the subjects that I wrote.
Correct.
There was a woman named Rachel Moore who writes for The Atlantic, and when she did the interview with me, she said it's funny for someone who's you know, who's a narcissist. She goes, you picked a career path where you have to sit and show interest in other people's stories, and you have to be quiet. She goes, and you have to show interest, and you have to really delve into their stories. But and I was like, yeah, that I thought that is odd. But for me, it's entertainment. Like if I'm watching a movie, I don't talk during the movie. If I'm talking to these guys, I ask them a question and they just start talking and I'm writing. Then I ask another question and they write. I know their lives inside and out by the time I'm done.
Right.
And so it's funny that I've chosen that career path as opposed to, just, I am trying to sell books and I am doing because I'm trying to sell a memoir.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these guys' stories kind of are intertwined with mine in some ways. But yeah, I mean, listen, you're right. I mean, it's not a challenge or a hardship on me to go on a podcast and talk about myself for 3 hours.
Right.
I mean, that's not like these guys are always the guys in the comments are always saying, oh, I hope that guy's paying you. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I pay him.
Right.
Right. I drove an hour and a half to get here. I drove 2 hours.
Talk about me.
You didn't pay me anything. I'm ready. We get to talk about me for 3 hours and you have to listen. And then at the end of it, I'm going to get to sell a bunch of books. Sign me up.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought this up. So let me run a theory by you. So you are in some way making or starting to make a living on crime, on other people's criminal stories. Because there's my theory is that there's something about you attracted to it. That's why you were good at it. You were good at crime. You were successful at crime. And now you like those criminal stories. So here's my theory / question. So if you didn't have that, if you didn't interview these people, if you couldn't write these books about them and yourself, and you had to work in customer service, would you be thinking about a real crime? Or does this fulfill the need for crime?
No,
this just stupid?
No, you're absolutely this fulfills the need for crime. I think it takes place certainly of doing it. You get to hear about it. You get to hear about how they got around this or figured this out or who helped them so it definitely helps fulfill that need or that desire, that interest by listening to these guys and writing their stories down. That craving, I guess, because I mean, I think about like people will ask me, oh, so, do you ever think about it anymore? I'm like, right. I think about it all the time.
Right.
I mean, I do. I drive down the street and I see some abandoned house or somebody's talking to me. And as soon as they say something, I think, oh my God, I can't believe he just told me that, or I'm thinking, oh, wow, what you could do. And I'll start to go, I start to think, no, okay, never, I'm not going to say that. But then I'll sit there and spend an hour on my way home thinking, man, if he did this and then contacted so-and-so and told them this, oh man, that would be great. I'll start putting it together in my head, how the whole scam would work out. And then a lot of times it just gets it out of my system.
So it's a side business for you. You just do a podcast where you get the glasses and the mustache and the big nose and you make a fake name and you advise on crime.
You know what I've thought about doing? This is thought about doing because I'm doing movie reviews right now.
Right.
Just to get content on the table. And it allows me to kind of just talk about the movie and the crime. Is this work or that work? This makes sense. This doesn't make sense. And I was just interviewed by GQ to do, they might want me to do a movie review, which would be great.
Mm-hmm.
But I was going to tell you this. But I thought about doing a podcast. Like I just ordered equipment and stuff so I can do kind of like this. Like I'll just talk and then post it. But I'd like to review other people's scams, like Bernie Madoff. What
Right.
did he do wrong?
Right.
Or, Sam Israel, what did he do wrong? And then you'd have an exit strategy. None of these guys have exit strategies. He's just going to keep doing it. I mean,
Yeah,
Bernie
that
Madoff,
that is true. They don't have like a 5-year plan. These guys just think it's going to
right.
go forever.
I mean, Bernie Madoff, did you really think you were going to
Yeah.
be able to pull this off forever? That's not a con man. Con man has an exit strategy. He's running a con game. He's running he's following a plan. He's got it's not in his name, and he has an
Yeah.
escape. So anyway, I thought that'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. There's a couple of things that a couple of nuggets that I've heard you say before on interviews that are pretty interesting. And one I saw a couple days ago where it was one of the reviews when you were reviewing the films. And you stopped and you looked at the camera and you said, I've known guys that own Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and they're
Right.
all assholes. They're all so what is there? Is there something about a human being when they buy opulence like that or Ferrari's just drawn to people that are just ridiculous?
I mean, it's so flashy. I can't imagine if I had $20 million. I can't imagine going and buying a Lamborghini.
Right.
I couldn't imagine getting out. It just, to me, it just screams, look at me, look at me. Look at what I have and you don't have. It's such arrogance. And I mean, I couldn't do it. And the funny thing is, like, every guy I've met that has a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or, these 200, 300, $450,000 vehicles, when you spend a little bit of time talking to them, you realize they're just assholes.
Really.
I mean, it very quickly becomes evident that it's like, oh, you're just kind of a jerk off.
Right.
Like, I was hoping to meet you and talk to you, and in the end, you were going to be like this really good guy. Like, I know one guy I think he's had 3 Lamborghinis. His name is Joseph Vitale. I wrote a story about him.
Yeah.
He's like a super great guy now, and he knows this. He's heard me say this. Like, now I'd hang out with Vitale. He's like a good guy. He went through art. He went to prison. He went through RDAP. I've watched him cry like a baby about his family and what he's done. And it wasn't like to get through the program. It was like the kind of thing where if you mentioned it to him today, he'd well up thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the person he was when he was buying those things was such a selfish prick.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll tell you, just complete selfishness, didn't care about anybody, didn't. And he would go all into that. And now to this day, I think if he had $20 million, I don't think he'd buy that car.
Mm. I
think he'd be more conservative. I think he's got his values are in the right place, and he's still arrogant. Still an arrogant guy, but more tempered, and just a genuinely nice guy now.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, and even he says it. What's so funny is if you know a guy with a Lamborghini, and you talk to him, and you were to mention this to him, he'd be like, "Oh, I'm a nice guy. What are you talking about? I this, I that." And he probably would never own up to it. But if you asked enough people that kind of know them, they would probably be like, "Yeah, he's kind of a jerk. He's this, he's that." But he doesn't know it.
Right.
You just don't know it when it's happening. And, you start to realize that in the mornings, it's the worst. I'd wake up and it would be the worst. And throughout the day, it got better. But I started noticing that pattern. And so this is what you're talking about. I would wake up and I would think, my first thought was, I woke up in prison. I had about 26 years to go. And I'm wake up or 24, 25, whatever it was. And I was like, oh my God. And then my first thought was, how much dental floss do I have to buy at commissary in order to weave a rope so that I can hang myself in the bathroom at 2:00 in the morning between guard shifts? Like, they had a rail that was up there. That's like probably the only place you could do it. And I remember, and I really would lay there and think about that. And then, eventually you start to think that's not That's not normal behavior. It's not reasonable. What are you thinking? Stop thinking that. It's okay. Just get up. You just get some coffee. So I started doing little baby steps.
Mhm.
If you can just get some coffee, you can still go to commissary, but get some coffee. So I get some coffee, and then I get the coffee and I'd be like, okay, coffee, it's good. The coffee's good. Then I get ready and I think, you got to meet so-and-so. And I go meet this person. And by 10 o'clock, I meet this guy and where I'm taking notes, and it's a little bit better and it's not so bad. And then by 2 o'clock, I'm eating lunch and I'm hanging out with my buddy Pete. And I'm like, Pete's a good guy. You like Pete. Pete's nice. Stop thinking about this. It's okay. Then by 4 o'clock, I start thinking things are good. Things are okay. They're okay. You're okay. It's not a great situation, but you've got some good guys. You're writing some good stories. You're going to write this guy's story after this guy's. Things are looking up. By 6 o'clock, I'm like, you got stuff in the court. You're going to get your sentence reduced. Things are good. This is going to be a good experience. You're lucky. You're lucky to be in this situation. By 10 o'clock, I'm telling myself, you're going to get out of prison. You're going to have all these stories written. You're going to take over the world. Everything's amazing. You're lucky. You're going to look back and say, this was a good experience. You're lucky to be here. You're lucky that you did all this and you got these stories and that you met these guys. These are some great guys. You're going to be upset when you leave. This is amazing. And I'd fall asleep thinking, you're going to get some movies made, some series made. This is great. You got great material. And I'd wake up the next morning and my first thought was, how much dental floss do I have to buy at commissary to weave a rope to kill myself? I mean, and this happened, every day. It happened every single day, for a decade, for a little over a decade.
That's incredible.
And I still, to this day, I mean, when I wake up in the morning, it's just the worst part of the day is waking up in the morning. Only two kinds of people that in my life that I'll allow, or that are out there. And I break everybody up as two groups. There's those people that are 100% acceptant of the person that I was and the person that I currently am. And there are those people that can go fuck themselves. And I got nothing for you. Iteration. So the only way to get through that to me is you go and you sit down with your daughters and you explain to your daughters, this is what happened. And that there are two kinds of people that are going to be in your lives and my life. And it's those people that are accepting of it and those people that we have nothing for. Mm-hmm. And to me, once you break it up like that, and I wouldn't be rude to anybody. I mean, I've gone out on dates with women that as soon as they found out that I just got out of prison, they immediately, what? Oh my God. I mean, they literally almost threw a scene. Mm-hmm. And I told them, I said, yeah, let me tell you something. There's two kinds of people. I just told them flat out, you're clearly not accepting of what's going on and what's happening. And I'm never going to be that person to deny it or try and spin it or do anything. This is what happened. This is the way it is. Deal with it. Look, nobody gets the life that they expected, that they wanted, that they deserved, or that they hoped for. Nobody. You get the life that comes your way or that you make for yourself. And sometimes it just happens to you. Sometimes you get hit by a car. Sometimes you have cancer and you lose a leg. So who knows? But it's the life you have. You do the best with it, and you have to be able to laugh about it. You have to be able to have a sense of humor. I mean, you have to be thankful to even be here. I'm not in prison. Mm-hmm. My out date was 2030. And don't think for 1 second that the judge and the U.S. prosecutor or the agents were going to lose an ounce of sleep had I spent every single day incarcerated till 2030. They don't care. So, I'm lucky to be here. I'm blessed to be here. And if my name was in the paper tomorrow, as long as the bulk of what they said was true, I'm okay with that. You can't live your life dodging things that you've legitimately done. You should have thought about that.
Right.
When I'd be sitting in the chow hall and the guys would be bitching about the food, And I'd say, well, you know, when you were robbing those banks and when you kidnapped those 5 people and zip tied them and went into the vault in Bank of America, you weren't thinking about what are they going to serve me in prison if I end up in prison. You weren't complaining about the rice. You weren't thinking about that then. So, you know, you're lucky. You're lucky they're giving you food at all.
Mm-hmm.
Not what I thought it was going to be like. So it's just, listen, you just have to be thankful and there's, you know, I wouldn't run from it. I wouldn't hide from it. I just categorize people and keep moving on.
Great, great stuff, and a great place to stop. That's always a pleasure to talk to you. The memoir of Matt Cox, great book. The site is called Inside True Crime.
Yeah, Inside True Crime.
And then there's YouTube as well. That's also, is that Matt Cox or is that Inside True Crime?
It's like if you can put Inside True Crime, it comes up. You can put Matt Cox too. It's Matthew Cox and Inside True Crime. Any of them, and my website's going to come up.
And then we've got a bunch of movies that you've reviewed that are pretty good. I think I'm caught up. I think there's one that you just did that I have to get caught up, and then I got to read the book you sent me, so I'm excited about that. So always a pleasure, Matt. You honestly, we pulled some nuggets out of here. This was worth doing. I really appreciate it.
Sure. No, listen, any opportunity to talk about myself. All right.